Everyone, hi, my name is Megan Finnerty, and it is truly my blessing and a joy to be here with you this evening and get us into this night of live storytelling. So first of all, thank you guys so much for coming. Yes! You braved an incredible drop in temperatures, which I feel like is worth mentioning here in Houston. Obviously 60 degrees in February in the rest of the country would be a dream. I don't know about you, I walked out of the house and I was like, it is freezing. We're so excited to have you here tonight. We are the Houston Landing. We use live storytelling to create community and connections among neighbors and each other, and we hope between us and our newsroom and all of you. We'd like to start by saying thanks for taking a chance on live storytelling. The reason I say it that way is because frankly, usually when you leave the house these days, you could have read a preview, you could have read an advanced story, you could have watched a trailer. It's rare that most of us go out and don't totally know what to expect from the media that we consume or the event we're about to go to. So congratulations for being curious and adventurous. Yes, I love it. Yes, cheer for your neighbors. I'd also like to super thank Shelly Travis and her team here at the Eldorado Ballroom. Yes, I love the whooping. Keep it up. What a beautiful venue. I don't know if do any of you have Eldorado Ballroom love stories? Like, have anybody who got married here or? Okay, well maybe tonight is the night. Let's lean in. I'd like to take just a second to thank Javier. Are you here? Do you want to wave? Javier is really Javier is at the heart of the Storytellers project and making the logistics happen. Sydney is one of the people behind the bar, but she's also she's behind the bar, but she also is our director of marketing. Giselle Rodriguez, you met behind the bar maybe, but in her regular life, she's one of our senior editors. And Sydney's family members were also your other bartenders. I think her dad and her uncle. Thank you, gentlemen. I would offer to pay them, but I'm in too deep now, and I don't know an amount of money that would suffice. Tonight is not a TED Talk. It is not an inspirational speech. You probably saw the ticket price and thought, I don't think Tony Robbins will be here for that price point. There's no slide slam behind me. We're not gonna do a Pecha Kucha. No one's gonna try to convince you of anything in 5 minutes or less. Instead, storytelling is predicated on visiting. And I trust that you all know how to visit, right? You open your heart and your mind to a person with whom you would like to feel closer, and you are curious about their lives. That is really the miracle of storytelling, and we invite you into that space tonight. Some of these stories will be polished and professional. Some will be casual and conversational. Some are gonna deal with kind of hard and adult truths, and others are going to be very breezy and funny. And why am I telling you this? Because each of the storytellers tonight have volunteered their time over the last 2 months to prepare their stories to be a gift to you of their lived experience. And we invite you to we hope, see yourself reflected in them in some way. Are you guys ready for our co-MC? Angelica Perez is going to reflect a little bit on her love for Houston as a native Houstonian, and then she's going to get us right into the show.
Thank you for the introduction, Megan. Tonight we celebrate love and heartbreak in the city we all love, through the winter freezes, the traffic, and all the hurricanes. As a born and raised Houstonian, there's so much I love about Houston, from the food to the culture, to being able to say I'm from the same city as Beyonce and Megan Thee Stallion. But most importantly, I love that Houston is a beacon of opportunity. From watching my parents who immigrated from another country build a business from the ground up here to getting my first job here, Houston has given me so much. I've made lifelong friends here, some of whom are in this audience. I've gotten my heart broken in the city, and thankfully no one is here for that part of my life. But I hope you all take home with y'all these stories with an open heart and a little bit of love, a little bit more love for the city that we all call home. And with that, I'd like to introduce Tracie J.
Woo, 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 woo! Let's go. lift it up.
Just lift it up. Oh,
Maybe.
it's fine. We can hear
Is it fine? You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I have my emotional support bubbles. Tomorrow might have been my 32nd wedding anniversary. I met this guy, Chris, when I was 17, my first day at Sam Houston State University. And he walked past my dorm room and he said, "I'm gonna marry you." And I was like, you might want to discuss that with my boyfriend. And that boyfriend situation didn't work out. And Chris and I got to be friends. And then we started dating. And in October of 1992, he said, "Let's get married." I was like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And then he got cold feet, so it didn't happen. And then in January of 1993, we realized we were pregnant. And so we panicked and we eloped and we got married. Zakia, daughter number 1, was born in September 1993, and that is a love story altogether different. And in October 1995, Naila was born, and in April 1997, Tahira was born. And if you're doing the math right now, I was 24 years old, and I had 3 daughters in car seats. My good friend Lael just reminds me all the time that there was so much hair to comb. There was so much hair, and there was so many tiny white socks. And I was tired a lot, and I was miserable a lot, and I was overwhelmed a lot, and I felt like if I just pour myself into these girls, nobody will ask me how I'm doing. And mostly that's how it went. Nobody asked me how I was doing, and I was miserable. And I was thinking about marriage vows. And you know, in the marriage vow, they say, "Until death do you part." And I wondered how many times and in how many ways do I have to die before I can leave? And I was at my 34th birthday party, and I was talking to my friend Illyria, and I was like, this is so hard, and I'm so tired, and it's been 14 years. And she said, it doesn't have to be 15. And so on Super Bowl Sunday, I called my dad, who I knew would come, because the rule in our house was, if you call me, I will come. And I asked him to come and pick me up. And then I called Illyria and I said, I'm gonna be late for our Super Bowl party because I'm leaving my husband right now. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. And then I got a message on MySpace. I don't know if y'all remember MySpace. I got a message on MySpace, this guy, Clarence. A very handsome man he was. He is. He ain't going nowhere. He just ain't with me. Clarence asked me to go to lunch, and I was tired that day too, because 3 children, I was always tired. And I told my coworker, I have this date with this guy, and I really don't feel like going. And she was like, just go. It's just lunch. You never know. We serve a God of the suddenlies, she said. And that date lasted half a day. And when I went to church the next day with my girlfriends, I said, if this man asks me out again, I have been on my last first date. And he asked me out again.
Yes.
And we got married about a year later. And I had 3 daughters, and he had these 2 little boys and a daughter. So we started this Brady Bunch life. And he was the associate pastor at our church, and I was all hands on deck supporting him in ministry. And he supported me while I finally finished my undergraduate degree, and I got a master's degree and started a career as a nonprofit professional. And it was really good on paper. And it was really good in pictures. We were cute, y'all. And I thought that it was hard some days, but that marriage is hard some days. And I didn't think anything that we were facing was insurmountable. But then I lost the job, and I was unemployed for a lot longer than I thought I would be. And we lost our house. And he decided that rather than us stick it out together, that would be a good time for us to get separated. I didn't see it coming. And it hurt. You know that kind of pain where you can't really get yourself together, can't really catch your breath, can't really get yourself up off the floor? It was that kind of pain. And he probably told me why he didn't want to be married to me anymore. It all just sounded like the teacher in Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 right? But the thing that stuck was that he said he didn't know me. And here I was, married to this guy who is a pastor and who has a degree in marriage and family therapy. And he was out here saving other people's marriages, but ours couldn't be saved because he didn't know me. And so at 41, I started from scratch. I moved into an apartment for the first time by myself ever in life. That was until my youngest daughter decided to be my roommate. It's fine. And I started examining my life, examining myself. I poured into some books. The two that stick out for me are Marianne Williamson's A Return to Love and Shonda Rhimes' Year of Yes. That book, Year of Yes, is responsible for the one and only tattoo I have. My friend Tina hand wrote the word yes on my shoulder in reverse. So when I look at it in the mirror, I'm reminded to say yes to myself. And it was in those 2 years of separation, when I was trying to figure out my life, that I realized it was probably impossible for Clarence to know me because I didn't know myself. I had spent years getting to know my daughters so I could be a good mother. And I thought I knew my husband's, and I thought I was a pretty good wife. And I had met other people's expectations for 40 years. So I was a decent human. But who the hell was Tracie? And so I started this adventure, Feed the Happy. And I just decided I was only going to do the things that really gave me life. So if I wanted to go for a walk in Herman Park on a random Tuesday morning, yes, please. And if I wanted to eat ice cream for dinner and go to the movies by myself, yes, please. And if I wanted to ride the megabus to Dallas and sleep with this man I used to love, yes, please. And one day I ran into Clarence's daughter, Raven, and she said, "Mom, you're glowing." And I realized that my yeses were paying off. And when I look back at 30 years of my life and 2 marriages, I used to think that I failed. And now I know I was in 2 marriages and they ended. And when anything ends, something else begins. When I was in my first marriage, I gave birth to my daughters, and in my second marriage, I gave birth to myself.
Oh my gosh. Tracie, thank you so much. That's right, you want to start off the show with self-love and reflection. But really, I do want to say, Tracie, thank you so much for telling us a story with such thoughtfulness and grace and vulnerability. Because when she first called me and she said, like, "Hey, I think you opened our phone call and said like, well, I want to tell a story about how my husband told me that we had to divorce because he didn't know who I was. My heart stopped. And I was like, definitely, I want to hear all of this story. But it takes incredible self-knowledge and self-love to be able to tell that story with such humor and warmth, and not to have asked us to buy her 4 to 7 espresso martinis before she got into it. So, Tracie, thank you so much for opening the show and sharing your story with us. It is my true honor to bring up our editor-in-chief, Manny García, which does not mean you have to clap extra for him just because he's literally my boss. But he is not going to lecture you about the importance of local journalism. Clearly you're here so you know it. Instead, he's here with a story about true love across time.
Oh, yay!
Thanks, Megan. So this story starts 30 years ago, and it's an example of faith, fate, trust, and watch out what you pray for. So in 1990, Elizabeth Roldan graduates from the University of Texas at Austin and drives to Miami. Manny García finishes his internship at the Boston Globe and returns home to Miami. We both become journalists in one of the most competitive markets in the country. And for the next decade, we are in a fist fight journalistically on scoops and punches. There's only one difference: we've never met. And it's a battle. And then you fast forward to the year 2000. There's a case involving a little boy named Elian Gonzalez, whose mother fled Cuba to bring him to the States. And in the Florida Straits, she drowns. A fisherman saves his life. And he's brought to Miami. And it becomes the extraordinary story that really tears the community apart. You've got one group, the exile community, which I'm part of, wants him to stay in Miami. His father says, return him to Cuba. I love my son. It's an extraordinary, gripping story, and I'm covering it round the clock, and so's Elizabeth, who I haven't met. Then one day, our news partner, their truck is parked there, their TV truck. I go inside, and there she is, brunette, glasses, sassy. Checks off all the boxes for me. And she looks at me, she says, so you're page one Manny. And I go, I love that. She goes, yes. And then we start talking about all these stories, like the war stories. Remember this killing on South Dixie Highway? Remember that over here? Remember there? And it becomes crystal clear to me that we have been in a boxing match. The difference is I'm on the street, she's behind a desk sending her people. And we immediately, it's an extraordinary how we meld, how we click. So I keep on going back to the TV truck for an excuse just to talk to her and catch up. And we clearly have a really wonderful connection. Fast forward, the feds come in and there's a raid, and they return Elian Gonzalez to Cuba to his parents. We go on with our lives, so it's Miami. It's crime, corruption, cocaine. It's Miami bitches, as they say. So we go on with our journalistic lives. She goes on in her job. I get promoted. I end up with the keys to the Mother Herald, so I'm running news. It's extraordinary. But deep inside, I'm really struggling, and I'll talk more about this. I'm struggling with a lot of what I say, mental issues and anxiety due to the number of crimes I've covered over the course of my career. I'm struggling in my marriage, and I'm really not seeking any help. I can't remember her name. And so I'm Googling, I'm trying to find who she is. I look up news director, assignment editor, you name it. I could have solved this thing by just calling Nick Bogert, who was her reporter, who I was punching with all the time and she and Nick were kicking my ass. But I didn't call Nick. I was too prideful. I didn't want to say, oh, look, I kind of like Elizabeth. So, again, so think about, we have this connection, then we separate. Fast forward to 2012. I'm now the editor of what's called in South Florida the Ferrari, which is El Nuevo Herald, the Spanish language newspaper. And I am what I think is a story of a career. I'm working with 60 Minutes on an investigation into Medicare fraud, and we're going undercover. And it's going to be an extraordinary story. Then the snitch who's going to take us into this place to meet these guys committing this crime, he never shows up. And I end up calling his wife, and she's sobbing. And I said, where's your husband? He's in jail. What happened? Don't you read your own paper? He's in your newspaper. And everything's gone south. I'm standing near despondent. Who walks in? Elizabeth. I haven't seen her since forever. And I immediately see her, I go, it's you. She goes, uh-huh. And we go into her office, and it's like the conversation that we were doing in 2000, we just pick up. It's like we never stopped. I look at her desk, and yes, she's got her pens aligned red, green, blue. Everything is organized. For all of you who know me or work with me, I've got my pencils. For me, it's my pencils. But everything is aligned. She says, yes, I'm a double Virgo. And so we have this extraordinary connection, so I'm great. But I'm very respectful. I'm married, I know she's married. So we work on projects, and life's great. But then the distance happens again. I tell her, look, I've got this opportunity to go work in Naples, to work an extraordinary editor and a publisher. And I'm going to leave South Florida, and she becomes really my consigliere. And I felt like I needed to leave my hometown to be able to succeed outside of, what I knew was the place with the secret handshake. So I go to Naples, and we do extraordinary work. I get to meet Jacob Carpenter, who's now works with us. And I get to partner with Elizabeth on some great projects. Fast forward, then the world of journalism, how everything gets scooped up, I end up working with Gannett, and I'm a regional editor. And then by this time, I'm really struggling with my mental health. My marriage is, at this point, it's going to be over. I'm talking to Elizabeth as I'm with USA Today. I'm back in South Florida, and she tells me, Manny, I'm divorced. And I'm like, well, I'm separated. That was our thing. We come together, and I will tell you that kissing her felt like the most natural thing on the earth. And we move in together in 2019, and that should be the end of the story where we're together. But then the rest of the story is in 2020. God has a different plan. I get what I view as the job of a lifetime. I go to work in Austin to launch an investigative initiative between ProPublica and the Texas Tribune. I'm there in the office 2 weeks when COVID hits, and it becomes the worst year of my life. My divorce is finalizing. I'm having these recurring nightmares. Everything that I told you before is just getting worse. Fortunately, Elizabeth is working with me because with COVID, everything's remote, so she's in Austin. Then 5 friends die, none from COVID, 3 from heart attacks and 2 from cancer. And then the final straw for me was a woman named Maria. And Maria was very dear to me because she was the best source I had. And I want to tell you a story about treating people with dignity and respect in their worst moments. Maria becomes my best source because when I was covering the city of Miami, I did investigations, and as a result of that work, her husband George goes to federal prison. But I remembered at his worst moments, you treat people with dignity and respect. It's not lost on Maria. She becomes my source. She risks her career. She drops documents on me. George calls me and says, I have bad news for you. I knew Maria would want you to know because I knew you were close. She died today. When I tell you I dropped on the floor and I could not stop sobbing and I could not get off the ground, Elizabeth does what she's always done. She holds me close and she says, you can't go on like this. You can end up dead. You need to see a therapist. And that's what started my journey back, by seeing therapy and with her saving me. Accelerate, then, again, this is the part about watch out what you pray for. I'm in the desert after this and I say, God, if there's something out there for me, I love what I'm doing now, but open the door. Literally, like within a day or so, my former bosses called me from Gannett, says, the editor's retiring in Austin. Would you like to be the editor there? I'll start tomorrow. Meanwhile, my wife, who's here, Houston's her hometown, she gets hired at KHOU to be news director. She starts in January of 2021. I start in February of 2021. We're in the same state, 2.5 hours apart. Life is great. But what's the Austin journey about? I'm asking myself, how did this happen? Again, my wing woman, Elizabeth, is there. On May 24th, 2022, there's a mass shooting at Robb Elementary in Uvalde. 19 children and their 2 teachers are slaughtered. The narrative, if you read it, was if it wasn't for the heroics of law enforcement, more children would have died. We end up getting leaked a video. We end up getting a video that destroys, dispels the entire narrative. Elizabeth, who's a news director on TV, tells me, Manny, you need to watch that video from the start to the end and get a notepad and do timestamps, because that's going to be your story. So just to picture just the strength of she's beside me, guiding me through this extraordinary, difficult story. And we end up exposing this narrative, which then gets cited in other reports. We move forward, we're having this great life, and it's like, okay, God, what's next on this path? Then in 2024, out of the blue, again, our CEO, Peter Bhatia, calls me out of the blue and says, hey, Manny, we have an opening at the Houston Landing for an editor-in-chief. I said, Peter, I'll start tomorrow, I'll apply. I come, I get to meet this great team of journalists, and it's a magical ride to be at the Houston Landing. Now Elizabeth and I are home, finally in the same bed, the same walks, we're sharing everything, and even better so, tell me you're Cuban without telling me you're Cuban. Angel, you can't answer that. My mother-in-law brings me Cuban coffee every day without having to ask. So I've got this incredible knife now, and then in February of 2023, 2/3/23, Elizabeth and I get married here. So everything has been pieced together, and our love story is one of just, it took forever to piece together. It's a 30-year love story, and this morning, knowing I had to do this, I got up before she woke up, and I got to look over at her with her breathing, and this is a 30-year journey, and I'm blessed to be married. So happy Valentine's Day, Elizabeth. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Manny, for sharing the love and strength that you and your wife have shared over the years. Your story really shows us that what's meant to be will always find its way. Yeah, so with that, Hayley, I don't know where she is, but yeah. Our
Hey,
third.
you ready? There she is.
I met Alex in graduate school at the University of Oregon, and we were studying, getting master's degrees in architecture. I loved him. I know it sounds silly, but I truly believed it was love at first sight, and we were best friends from the start. Sorry. For one reason or another, we were just never meant to be together while we were at school. And those are stories that could be a whole storytelling event in themselves. But on March 14th, we were sitting in my apartment, and the news came on that the whole world was gonna go into a pandemic shutdown. And sitting there on the sofa, having no clue what the hell to do, Alex grabbed my hand and he looked at me, and straight in my eyes, he looked at me and he said, "I love you. And I don't know what's going on, but I know that we should probably be together." And I looked at him and I just said, "Well, I've always loved you, so let's do it." So like, we did it. And we were kissing, and as he was holding my hand there and we were listening to all this bad news, it felt so warm and fuzzy and all those good things. But then I felt warm and fuzzy, and then I felt like hot and clammy, and my heart was racing, and I was sweating and cold at the same time, and I was like, holy shit, I'm having a panic attack right now. All these good things and these bad things are happening at the same time. So I stood up to go get a glass of water, and as I did, I knew I was gonna faint. I turned around to look at Alex and go, "I'm gonna," and I fell face first into the concrete floor of my apartment. Alex took me to the emergency room, where we proceeded to have our first date with nurses in hazmat suits resetting my broken nose that was broken in 3 places, and them teaching him how to take care of someone with a pretty severe concussion. Over the next months, COVID was scary, and we learned a little bit more about it. And living in Eugene, Oregon, our beautiful, hippie-friendly town, turned silent and isolating and scary. And going to the grocery store was like taking your life into your own hands. But I know that was really bad. But I got to be in lockdown with this guy that I've always wanted to be with. That was the love of my freaking life. So, of course, we made love in every room in the house, and we danced to the Talking Heads in the kitchen, and we built a 15-foot cat wall for our cat, because everybody gets a cat in COVID. And we were broke, so we built all of our furniture out of pallets that we found behind the grocery store. And because I couldn't look at screens because my concussion was so bad, and I was like putting keys in the refrigerator, it was so bad, Alex taught me how to play chess. He was sweet, it was perfect, but no matter how cute Alex and I were, we could not escape the truths of COVID. We were in graduate school getting ready to graduate. We had no job prospects. Everything was getting pulled from underneath us, and we needed jobs like yesterday. Now, I cannot think of a good time ever in hindsight to graduate with an architecture degree, like ever. They always say it's so practical. You leverage your skills. Yeah, they really mean it. So Alex and I had to follow the work, and the big city called us. I got a job in Seattle with California Closets, copying and pasting closet modules. I had a degree where I could build you this building, but I was building closets from the living room in Seattle. Where we were coming from Eugene, and it was hippy-dippy and sweet, and the streets went quiet, and everything was, for the most part, pretty calm, and we went hiking every day, and, did all that. Seattle was the complete opposite. It was chaotic. There were riots in the streets. There were random people sleeping in our yard. You never know what the day was gonna hold. There was no consistency. We loved our apartment, but it was 700 square feet of the most slanted floors that you could roll a golf ball from one end of the house to the other, and no doors. And so where Alex and I were lovey-dovey in Eugene, in Seattle, we started bickering about like the pettiest shit. Like we all were. We all were. Like he came home with 100 rolls of single-ply toilet paper from Costco. Like why? We're still suffering the consequences of that one. Like it was gonna be the death of us if I put the fork tine the wrong way in the dishwasher. And it just, I pet the cat wrong, or he pet the cat wrong. Like it just was not, it was not working out, and we could not see ourselves building a life there. We were so unhappy. Alex is from New Jersey, and I'm from here in Houston, and they kind of have this saying of like, once you go back home, if you leave home in Texas and you come back, you're like gonna stay. But I was not ready to come back to Houston. So we followed, our path came to New Jersey. We packed up and sold everything we owned, got in the car, and we headed out the 2,000 miles to New Jersey. When we got there, we were pretty optimistic. I was really excited to just like have people that knew my name there, like, and just be like, hey, even if it was like, hey, you redheaded girl, like someone was acknowledging me. Alex's parents were great. And because it was so expensive to rent a place there, it was cheaper to buy a house. So with the help of our family, we bought a house. At first, I freaking loved this place. It was at the end of a cul-de-sac, and it had maple trees everywhere, and these beautiful baked leaves fell, and there were seasons. I don't know if you guys know what that is. But there were like actual month-long seasons there. And that was my favorite part. There was a creek in the backyard, and we even had a freaking pool that you could use 1 month of the year. But the realities of owning a home set in pretty quick. The walls leaked, which meant the roof leaked, which meant then we had black mold. And I hate owning a yard. Like a yard, no, never again. Give me AstroTurf all day. And then I didn't realize until one jumped into my hair in the middle of the night from the air vent that our house was infested with camel crickets. That when the pest control guy came over, he was like, that's so crazy because, you know, they're only endemic to the 2 square miles you bought your house in. I mean, they're like the size of your hand, and they jump like 6 feet at a time. They're horrible. They're like, I don't know, I've never met anything that could kick a roach's ass, but that might be it. So it wasn't just the house though. In 2023, you know, the pandemic for a lot of people seemed to come to a head. That it was like either you were going through it still or it was kind of over. Things seemed to open back up. But in that time, my stepdad, who was my father figure in my life since I was a little kid, passed away from COVID after being in the hospital for about a year. It was horrible because my mom and him, she wasn't even allowed to be in the room with him. So I was having to take care of my mom from 2,000 miles away, she's my best friend, so it was insanely difficult. And 2 months after that, my stepmother, who I'd also known since I was 2 or 3 years old, she passed away from a chronic illness. And then a few weeks after that happened, our cat dropped dead with no explanation. And I felt like where I was wondering who I was before I went to graduate school, while I was in graduate school, while the pandemic was happening and I was doing all that, now I really felt like I had no idea who I was, where I was going. I was just a complete shell of myself. And I was living in Alex's house with Alex's family, with Alex's friends, and I just didn't have me. But I did have Alex. Alex saw that I was a shell of myself and that I needed a change, but I wasn't gonna say that to him that I needed to get the hell out of here. But he asked me, what do you need? Like, how do I get my Hayley back? And I told him, I've gotta leave. I have responsibilities back in Texas, and I think it'd be really good for us. And he didn't skip a beat. We put the house on the market and it sold in 2 days. Yes! It was one of the happiest moments of my life. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so happy. I had no idea it wouldn't take that long. I got a great job. Someone took a chance on me in Houston and let me work remote until I got there. And when we got to Houston on January 1st, life got better. And I started feeling more connected with this people and the city that I've always loved and that I now get to share with Alex. We joined a bowling league and we get second place every time, but it's not last. And Alex helps decorate my dad's grave on the holidays, and if I mention in passing that my mom had a really bad day, without even inviting me, he will take my mom to House of Pies for hamburgers. I'll get over that. I'll forgive you. Life got a lot better, and Alex and I have always been really strong, but I realized that when we moved from New Jersey to Houston, I was asking him to give up his life and the things that we had goals and dreams about for ourselves in New Jersey because of me. He did it all for me, and usually we did it for the both of us. And then our love had grown and matured into something really, really special, more special than I could have imagined when I met him in graduate school, and he was just some hot guy that I really wanted to date and be in love with forever. So, flash forward, we're in our beautiful apartment, and we're dancing in the kitchen of the Talking Heads. And at this time, we've been best friends for about 8 years. And we're dancing, and I have my head on his chest, and I'd had a particularly bad day. And he's like, we're dancing, and he's like, how was your day? And I was like, I only cried once at work today. And our favorite song comes on, and David Byrne is singing, and you may find yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife. And I just whispered to him, and I was like, yeah, you know, maybe one day. And he pulled a ring out of his pocket, and he got down on one knee, and he said, how about right now? How about today? And I said, but it's Tuesday. And I am so excited that I get to spend the rest of my life with the man that I already knew that I was going to spend the rest of my life with, but like, and our lives are perfect now. They're not perfect, but they're everything that I'd hoped they'd be, and we're gonna elope in this November.
Hayley and Alex, thank you so much. Oh my goodness. I have to admit, when Hayley started working on her story, and she was like, hey, I have this love story about how at the very beginning of COVID, the guy I always was in love with was like, I'm in love with you too. And I was like, I had a very different beginning of COVID. And then I sat with that for a minute. So I just want to say, Hayley, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to work with you on the story and hear it, because I know for so many of us, the 2020 to 2023 was a really complicated time, and it is a real gift to have somebody tell a story that ends happily, but that also includes a lot of complicated feelings and ideas and hardships, but that at the core, you know, thank you for making us believe in just like real sweet, mushy gushy love. What a pleasure to hear that story, Hayley. Thank you so much. I'd like to bring up our last storyteller this evening. If you were, I think probably everybody were you all handed unbelievably good looking chocolate dip Oreos when you first walked in? Well, great. Molly is responsible for that, so act cool. I'm very excited to bring up our last storyteller. Molly Vorhees is here to bring it home and talk to us a little bit about, gosh, how chocolate changed her life.
So I once broke up with a boy over a bad Valentine's Day card. It was high school. Really wasn't into platitudes. I was young. I wanted romance. So when I got to Middlebury College, I was a junior, and I was, met some boys and whatnot, and I was kind of having a rough day, and I ran into Court in the library, my future precious husband, and he's like, hey, how's it going? We'd met a couple times. I was like, oh, I'm kind of having a bad day. And I wanted to get away because he was super cute. And I had not showered after field hockey practice, and I was wearing red shiny leggings. And I just kind of wasn't feeling great. My mom's brother had just died, and I walked away and kind of just tried to scoot. And he left a limerick on my desk for me. And it was super sweet, and was like, hope your day gets better, but in prose, because he could do that. And still can. And I kept it. I still have it framed. And a few weeks later, he asked me out on a date, and we went to see the Diablo dance troupe. And they came to Middlebury, and it was October 4th, 1996. And we both still have our ticket. So we went to the dance, and we enjoyed it. We did some stargazing, and from there, the rest was pretty much history. My mom might tell you about the time I tried to break up with him, and she was like, that's a bad idea. She knew right away. So, we were living our best life, right? We were young, we met young, so we were skiing and doing all these wonderful adventure travel together. Our friends were getting married. We were just enjoying being young. Our parents were healthy. And, we're like, all right, let's get married. Things were great. It was just that beautiful season in our life. It was just sort of magical. So, fast forward, I'm pregnant with our first child, Dayton, who's 18, which is just happens so fast, right? Everyone says that. But I'm pregnant, and I'm like getting tired, and I really had a hankering for ice cream. But I wanted homemade vanilla ice cream. And I didn't want, like homemade Bluebell, which I love. I wanted like hand-churned vanilla ice cream. It was about 8:45 at night. Court's like, all right, I'm on it. So he runs out, he goes to the, the hardware store and then the grocery store, and he's like churning this ice cream, right? And I was super happy. I was like, romance. Romance in 2006 was definitely alive. And, go on, have a baby. I'm like, wow, this is hard. And I've got, working and the babies and toddler and screaming. And our son we had to park behind our gate or he might run down the street and into traffic. It was that kind of kid. Still sort of is. And so Court's like, I really think we should have another one. I was like, it's too hard. He's like, no, let's have, we want to have 2 kids. I was like, all right. So I'm pregnant with our second Annie, and I write Court a letter about how it's gonna go. And I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate. And if he got up here right now, you guys would all have a lot of laughs, because mostly it said, the way to my heart is a wet towel on the hook, your dirty socks in the laundry, and a clean kitchen sink. So romance had gone, the bar had really, really lowered in the house. Okay, so we have Annie, we're surviving. You guys all know if you have kids or you just end up in that period in your life. And things in our house were sort of I'd be doing the dishes and I'd be like, don't get me flowers for Valentine's Day, they're too expensive. We don't do that. Get them the rest of the time of the year for me. And so, we're sort of, it's not the greatest, we're doing okay though. And we're getting our kids into the teen years, and we're still just so busy. And, this is that time in your life where you're sort of who has time for an affair? How do people do it? I was like, you don't have to worry about me. I ain't got time for it. I don't have time for an affair. So that was good news for us, right? But I did have time for a new business venture. So we run Becks Prime Management as our company, and we have a great team. And we're like, let's take on a new challenge. And what presented to us was the chocolate bar. What needed sort of it was kind of in a death spiral. And so we took over about 5 years ago, the management, and then we later purchased it. And the first thing we had to fix was ice cream. So you guys know that I love ice cream. So we went through and we did all the business school tool things. We, cut expenses, we trained everyone, we did all this stuff. And it was going really well. We were turning things around. And it's about 6 months into this venture that I'm sitting in the chocolate bar and I'm kind of just hanging out. It's a Wednesday around noon. And this little girl comes in with her parents and she's bald. And Selene, who is our store manager, says to the little girl, "Do you want to taste every single flavor in the case?" She figured it out right away what was going on. And that little girl's face and her parents in that moment were just so beautiful. And I was like, I love this business. And my heart just melted. I finally really understood in that moment what we could do for people and what food does for people. And at our next manager meeting, I said, hey, this happened. Tell me about other things that happen in here. And got everyone going. And, the stories about watching a new young couple find each other and what it's like to watch, how's the body language going on that first date? And just the celebration of, parents and grandparents, little kids with the chocolate all over their face. And the time that a woman came in and said, my mom really loves lemon velvet and you guys have discontinued it. It's not the summer anymore. And she's like, will you guys make a couple gallons for us? We're like, of course we will. So, there's something about the business that for me just started to open my heart up. And it's around this time Selene says, hey, are you gonna work Valentine's Day? I'm like, why? She's like, no, you need to come work Valentine's Day. I was like, all right, so this is gonna be my first Valentine's Day, the chocolate bar. So remember, you guys, I'm like, don't buy me flowers, I'm not into it. So I was like, all right, let's work. So I show up, and the place is packed. I was like, I should have gotten here a lot earlier. So rush in, and every walk of life is in there. Police officers, investment bankers, grandmas, kids, sons. So much fun. It's like everyone is just hopped up on the excitement of giving the gift of chocolate to somebody they love. Chocolate is all about caring. And in that moment, it just was so much fun. And one thing I just really remember was this young man who came up. He had no idea if his girlfriend liked dark or milk chocolate. And my only recommendation to all of you right now is to look at your partner and find out this question. It's very important. I actually helped a really sweet man this afternoon who was buying chocolate for his wife, and he's like, she only likes dark chocolate. I'm like, it's so good that you know that. So here we are. We're having a great time. It was just one of the best days. And I realized, we're in the business of taking cocoa and sugar and turning it into expressions of love and care. And we get to be that bright spot for so many people in their day. So, fast forward, here's what's sort of happening now. I know you're probably all a little bit worried about my romance with my husband, Court. But our kids are teenagers now. Things are good. And, we only talk about things like, I don't really like how you use your turn signal. Those sorts of things are still happening in our life. But there's lots of love. I adore Court. But in the business, it's been just such a great journey. And we are now, we've rebranded. We've now named it Winfield's Chocolate Bar after my dad, who's here, who, by the way, wanted his own cookies, so it was good. He liked that they were free tonight. So we've rebranded. We've got 3 locations, Rice Village and River Oaks, and one in the Galleria. And the business has just been so much fun because I'm so excited. So many people are coming in there and they get to give. Chocolate says that you care about someone. And I would just encourage everyone, go buy a chocolate bar for somebody when you see they're having a bad day or they've had some really good news. It will bring you so much joy. And again, I think love and chocolate has definitely opened my heart up.
Love you, Molly.
Thank you so much, Molly, for sharing with us your love story and your business. I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. It's a beautiful story, and I don't know why I'm losing my train of thought. Oh my god. I was doing so well.
You are still doing See? Yeah. You had her chocolate?
I have it actually.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry.
So now we need to like
I'm
be eating
definitely
it right now on
excited to eat it.
stage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
We're gonna keep going. We're just keep going. Molly, thank you so much for telling your story. We also do want to thank you. It was Molly's idea to hand out the chocolate to all of you tonight. So thank you so much for being a supporter of Houston Landing. Like, it's one thing to literally get up here and talk about your feelings to a bunch of strangers. It is another thing to give away your work product to your neighbors. So thank you so much for being one of our sponsors of tonight's experience. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much to our 4 storytellers for tonight. I know it took a lot of courage, and we are so thankful.
All right, if you were inspired and you thought, oh my God, I also have a story about literally anything in my life, fabulous, this is how we get storytellers. You'll see that in our program. Thank you so much, Javier and Sydney, for making it. We have listed a handful of our upcoming dates. We will have 7 other shows this year spread out across the like sort of broader Houston region, including, God willing, a show on the rooftop of Post when we'll be all decorated for the holidays. So look, it's not on there, but it's coming. So that's like our next several storytelling events. We are currently booking them. If you love rodeo, we will be doing a show at Sandman Studios on the 24th, all about rodeo. And I'm gonna tell you guys what, this morning I coached Dick Hudgens, who has been volunteering and working rodeo for 52 years. He's like a living Texas legend. And he's going to tell a story. I'm just going to give you straight up a preview because I'm so excited about this. This wasn't planned. This is good. He's like a little cowpoke when he was 3, he said. He was like a tiny little rural child on a horse, which I'm from Indiana. We have horses, but I'm not from that part of the state. And he was really into rodeo as a kid. And then more and more today that Dick and I chatted, he said that over his lifetime, rodeo went from being a thing that was like very rural and for a handful of people that were very agricultural and really just about like selling the stock here in Houston. And he said, but now, because of the dedication of all the people who make rodeo happen, it's this incredibly inclusive and broad and like culturally expansive experience for the entire city. And I was like, Dick, that sounds like an interesting story. Like, how did you change? And then he was like, we had Elvis, and we had all these people, but then one day we had the Jackson 5, and I knew everything was different. And I was like, that's a story. Okay, so Dick is going to be one of our storytellers next year about how he met Michael Jackson and a lot of other things. Or sorry, I just said next year, but next month. And I hope you yourselves will be some of our next storytellers, because that is the point of what the Houston Landing is doing. We're centering community here on stage. And then we're done, right? I will stop talking. I don't know. I just got really excited about his story. Thank you so much for coming. There is still wine and beer at the bar, but just white wine and regular beer.